Hi everyone, and welcome back to Anne's Family Recipe. Today I'm making 3 fun and only slightly spooky snacks perfect for Halloween. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Well, let's get snacking. First up, I'm making caramel coated Cheetos. Now stay with me here. Have you ever had Chicago style popcorn? It's a mix of caramel corn and then cheddar popcorn. This is a very similar concept. Although I will say, you don't get a lot of that cheesy flavor in the end. It's mostly just sweet and crunchy and very addicting. I loved the texture of these. So I'm starting with 1 stick of unsalted butter in my saucepan, and I'm going to link the recipe for you down below. I only made half of the recipe, just so you know. Then I added in 1 cup of brown sugar and 1/4 cup of light corn syrup and put this over medium heat, stirred it with my rubber spatula until it had all melted together. I brought this mixture to a boil and then let it continue to boil for 5 minutes, stirring frequently. While the caramel boiled, I poured my 10-ounce bag of crunchy Cheetos into a large glass bowl. And I think if you like a little bit of heat, these would be really delicious with flamin' hot Cheetos too. Next, I lined my rimmed cookie sheet with aluminum foil. In the original recipe, you bake them on the cookie tray and then transfer them to foil to cool, but I thought this would just kind of save me that step. I did spray it with baking spray, or you could use non-stick foil, but you definitely want to grease the surface if you don't have the non-stick aluminum foil. Once the caramel had boiled for 5 minutes, I removed it from the heat and added in 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and then stirred that in. And you'll see the consistency gets kind of foamy and a little bit lighter in color. I immediately poured this caramel sauce over the Cheetos and stirred it around to coat them as best as I could. Now, I had one little struggle here. My kitchen was pretty cold this day, so my glass bowl was cold, and that made my caramel start to cool very quickly. So they didn't all get quite evenly coated, but once I put them into the oven, I let them go for about 15 minutes and then stirred them around, and that caramel mixture had reheated, it melted, and I was able to finish coating the rest of the Cheetos. So you can see they're slightly stuck onto the bottom of my bowl, but in the end it all worked out fine. One quick tip here, whenever I'm making homemade caramel, I will immediately put my pot and then the bowl that I'm using into hot soapy water, and that makes it a lot easier to clean up. So these caramel coated Cheetos are gonna bake at 250 degrees for about an hour. And every 15 minutes, I pulled them out of the oven and just stirred them around a little bit, making sure that they were all coated and spread out so that they baked evenly. After an hour, you can pull these out of the oven and allow them to cool, and then you might want to break them up a little bit so you can eat them more individually as opposed to in clumps. But you can see there's this really yummy, crispy, sweet coating on the outside of the Cheetos. I have to say, I wish they were a little bit cheesier and saltier just so there'd be more of a contrast, but overall, my entire family loved these and we could not stop eating them. Next, I'm making Muddy Buddies, also referred to as puppy chow. Which do you call it? You can comment below. My husband has been asking me forever to make these, and I have never made Muddy Buddies in my life, and it's so easy to do. You start with 9 cups of rice Chex in a large mixing bowl. In a separate microwave-safe bowl, you combine 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips with 1/2 cup of creamy peanut butter and 1/2 stick of unsalted butter. And then you can melt this together in the microwave and mix it until it's thoroughly combined and smooth. Lastly, to the melted chocolate mixture, you add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and then stir that in. The next couple of steps are a little bit messy, but very worth it. So you're gonna pour the melted chocolate mixture onto the cereal and then stir it until everything is evenly coated. Next, I'm taking 2 gallon-sized Ziploc bags and I'm adding 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar to each of them. So the original recipe said use a 2-gallon zip top bag, but I didn't have that. And then you add 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, so I just divided that between the two. I'm using this really handy bag holder. I bought this on Amazon. It came in a multi-pack, and I will link this for you in my description box because I think they're really helpful to have, especially if you do any kind of freezer cooking, if you're cooking in bulk and then pouring things into bags to freeze for later. And even here, I'm not saving this for later, but it's so nice. It's like an extra set of hands holding the bag open for me while I pour half of the cereal mixture into each of the bags. Then you just zip the top of the bag and shake it up so that all of the cereal is coated with the powdered sugar. You shouldn't have any stickiness left over. This kind of dries it out so it makes it a little bit easier to eat. When you're eating the mix, you'll get a little bit of powdered sugar on your fingertips, but it's definitely less messy than just diving into the chocolate-coated cereal by itself, even though that may be very tempting to do. At this point, the mix was still a little bit warm, so I laid a piece of wax paper onto a rimmed cookie sheet, and then I spread out both bags of mix just so that they could cool and dry a little bit. And you can stop here, and this makes a delicious snack any time of year. But I wanted to make this a little more seasonally appropriate and festive. So I decided to add Reese's Pieces and everybody's favorite or least favorite, the most controversial Halloween candy, candy corn. You could add whatever you want. I just thought these colors looked really festive. I wanted to add pretzels and I completely forgot. I bought mini pretzels. I thought that salty crunch would be a nice contrast with all the other ingredients. They also have teeny tiny little already unwrapped Reese's peanut butter cups that would look really cute in here. The sky's the limit here. It's just sort of fun to add a little color, extra texture, and flavor to the mix. Lastly, I am making Sour Patch grapes. And these were a really fun, unique treat that our family tried out. I started with a big bunch of green grapes and I removed them from the stems and put them into a big colander. Now, this recipe requires citric acid. I bought this big bag for about $6 on Amazon. I wanted to use it in some candy making recipes like this, kind of the Sour Patch flavor, but I also saw that it's an ingredient in some cheese making that I'd like to try. So that's why I just went for it and bought the big bag. So I'm going to mix together 4 tablespoons of sugar, just regular granulated white sugar, and 2 teaspoons of the citric acid. These were pretty sour. My husband and I really like them. My kids thought they were maybe a little too sour. So if you want to start with more like a 1/2 teaspoon of citric acid or 1 teaspoon, and then go from there. You can always increase it if you'd like a little more of that tang and bite to your Sour Patch grapes. Next, I rinsed off the green grapes in my colander, but you want to keep them damp because that is how the sugar and citric acid mixture is going to stick to them. So I lined a rimmed baking sheet with foil and then put a wire cooling rack on top. And then I took handfuls of grapes and rolled them around in the sugar and citric acid mixture and then placed them onto the wire rack to dry. You have 2 options here. You could freeze them or you could just air dry them at room temperature. Freezing was fun, but made them a little bit difficult to eat because they were not only very sour, but also really cold. There were a lot of kind of unpleasant sensations going on. They were better, in my opinion, at room temperature. I loved the flavor, the texture, the both sweet and sour contrast together. And then I decided to sort of spookify these little Sour Patch grapes. And I bought candy eyeballs at Walmart and a little bit of white icing. And I used a toothpick to put a little icing as my glue onto the back of the eyeballs, and I put those on a few of the grapes just for a spooky Halloween touch. If you or your kids really like sour candies, this is a very fun snack to try, and it's a little bit of a healthier alternative. And of course, as I said before, you can experiment with how much citric acid you incorporate into your sugar, making them more or less sour. But I loved these little one and two-eyed monsters that I made out of the grapes. They were really cute. I ended up only using half the bunch of grapes, just because a little bit goes a long way with these treats, but they were really fun to try out. Thank you so much for joining me here today in my kitchen, and I'll see you again soon.